And I do want to talk about the overall that you're looking at in the outfield market. And when you look at it from the latest rumors outside of what we've seen from Pete and Bregman, the Mets are still being opportunistic. And what we heard last week, and we touched on it a little bit, but we'll talk about it a little bit more here. Jeff Passan on ESPN.com kind of talking about the Mets dabbling in the outfield market, even though they already have 4 outfielders plus Starling Marte, whether you want to count him as a viable outfielder or not, whether he plays left field or whatever. But there also has been some news that has come out recently as well. Jock Peterson, who went to the Rangers, the Mets were in on him. Now, obviously, Jock Peterson is a little bit more of a DH bat, but it looks like they are kind of circling into the outfield market and the DH market of kind of that versatility thing. We know that they talked about that in regards to JD Martinez last year, where there was a little bit of hesitance there and they wanted to wait for the right price. Teoscar Hernandez, it seemed like the Mets offered him a 2-year contract, and Tim Healy actually reported that after. And then there's another piece in the matter, which seems like the most likely scenario for the Mets this offseason, that being Jesse Winker. Now, this is a rumor. Okay, I'm specifying that this is a rumor, but it also does tie into what we're looking at on the free agent market. So I do want to bring it up. John Frisella on X, if I said that right, if I said that wrong, I don't know. He said Winker wants to return to the Mets, but understands they may currently have higher priorities to sign. Winker was ecstatic with his Mets teammates, coaches, and fans during his short tenure with the club this season. I mean, there is definitely some to work with in terms of fit into your lineup. Nothing crazy past the Anthony Santander, who I do want to get into a little bit more specifically, of course. But when it comes to the overall outfield market, the Mets right now, of course, having Nimmo, signing Soto, bringing in Jose Siri, Tyrone Taylor, I know that they trust in center field to get those reps. And then you also have Marte here, who is probably viewed as more of a DH at this current moment. But overall, the outfield market right here, and this is where I'm going to cue you guys in. I'll go to Frank first. I tweeted this out, I think yesterday or 2 days ago, of the guys who I believe that the Mets probably are looking outside of Teoscar Hernandez. If I had to make a guess in terms of like the Stearns model, again, I don't know. I don't have any sources. But if I were to take a guess, I think they were looking at Jerickson Profar. I think that they are looking at Kike Hernandez. And I would also say that Jesse Winker is also in that market. Would you agree with that? Would you add something else into that? I mean, Michael A. Taylor is another one that you can add in there because the Mets have been linked to him before.
I think this is more of a DH conversation than as far as like an outfield thing. Mainly because of Juan Soto being here and Brandon Nimmo being here in the corners. And as we said, when we look at this list and we look at the guys on here, outside of Bader and Taylor, which with Bader been there, done that, these guys are not offensive upgrades. I mean, there is much more of a need for a true designated hitter. While Marte could give you some offensive value, he doesn't give you, like I've said a million times, what a designated hitter should give you, which is power. He does not give you that right now. So you're looking at guys who kind of fit that mold a little better. And it's like, generally speaking, if I had that list of players and I got to add one just for a baseball team, I love Jerickson Profar. I've made that clear for years. I love the switch hitter, versatility, all this other stuff. But does he fit what this Mets team is looking for right now as more of a DH bat, more of a power bat? Not really. I mean, he had a really nice batting average this season, an all-star year, things like that. He had power when he faced the Mets a couple years ago in the playoffs. But, other than that, he's not really that kind of guy. It's like, if Teoscar Hernandez is the kind of player that you're looking at, like, he's very different than somebody like Jerickson Profar. And you made the point in our group chat that you were a little surprised that Teoscar was the guy they're going for because he does have some similarities offensively as far as his weaknesses. Mostly the fact that he's right-handed. And I feel that, again, my vision is that once Luis Angel Acuna takes McNeil's job, because I think that's going to happen, it's just going to become very, very, very right-handed heavy. It's just that's the way it's going to be. And with Lindor being at the top, with Soto being near the top, your other lefty bat is Nimmo, and then it's just going to be a bunch of right-handers. So I feel like, having that lefty, and as we've talked about, if a team is going to face the Mets and match up, they want to go with guys that have that slider going away. If Eric Chavez is a slider hitting coach, it's like you want a lefty to help kind of balance some of those guys out and not just have a situation where you have the bases loaded. You're Walker Buehler with the bases loaded. You're Jack Flaherty with the bases loaded. Aaron Nola, bases loaded, right-handed pitcher, and everyone's going to go chasing and strike out and strand the bases loaded. You don't want to do that anymore. You've got to capitalize on the situation. So somebody that's more left-handed would fit that. That's kind of know a little bit more with Jesse Winker too. I mean, that's kind of one of the other things. Like you're kind of wondering, oh, what's this guy going to be like as a Met? Meanwhile, Winker, you already know that for the most part. He was obviously phenomenal in the playoffs, and he still cannot get that full playing time. So that is something that I would like to see happen. Like if the Mets do bring back Winker, I want to see him actually get that high amount of reps at DH and not having to share it with JD Martinez. Like he would actually get to play a lot. So that would be a big thing for me. And then as we know, it's like if you want to use Marte against left-handed pitching for now, unless you want to add somebody else that's right-handed against left-handed starters, that's an option too. Yeah. But I think when you're looking at these remaining guys, as like you said, a guy like Jock Peterson off the board and some others, I mean, who else is really left that would kind of fit what we're talking?
I mean, I do agree. And I think that this is something that Frank emphasized a lot during the season. This is something that I've kind of carried out into the offseason. The main reason as to why this Mets offense was so 0 to 100 and inconsistent, whether they got the job done or not, was because they had so many right-handed hitters that got bullied by secondary stuff, whether it was from the left side or the right side. These guys were continuing to chase. I would prefer it to be a left-handed guy, which, you know, lefty-righty is not something that I full-on advertise here. But when it comes to overall zone damage, a right-handed pitcher to a left-handed hitter, there definitely is more wheelhouse in that sense, especially from the arm angles that a lot of pitchers throw from. This is just kind of how this league has been adjusted to, with how pitchers throw now, of the overall deception that they give you. It's not all just throwing 107 miles an hour. It helps, but it's not the 100% thing that brings in this type of dominance. Obviously, when the Mets faced a team like the Dodgers that did not have the best pitching, they still had guys that threw from some different types of arm angles that had great breaking stuff, and they were bullying our right-handed hitters with it. And you can't rely on those types of things as to where the Mets just have such a right-handed heavy lineup as of right now. Obviously, Lindor can bat left-handed as he is a switch hitter. Soto bringing him in, obviously. And then Nimmo. Those are all top of the lineup guys. It's all about if it is a good fit here. That's what Stearns understands, and that's why he's weighing out all of these different options of how these guys fit in. When it comes to the overall of guys like Alex Bregman or guys like, Pete Alonso. Pete Alonso is a right-handed hitter, got bullied by the slider overall, but he also is somebody that I'm a little bit more open to bringing back because of how prolific he is. The only prolific right-handed hitters that I'd be willing to bring in would be prolific power hitters. And there's not many besides guys like Pete or, outside of that are just right-handed heavy. There's not really much out there. I mean, is there anybody else with that 35 to 40 home run power out there that is a pure right-handed bat? Like, is that it?
I mean, how many guys in general are 30 home run bats left on the market, regardless of if they're right-handed or left-handed? I mean, at this point, you just want the power no matter where it's coming from. And, with someone like Teoscar off the board, outside of Santander, and to your point, Pete, but again, Pete doesn't even solve that because he's playing first base, so that does not help the DH issue. Exactly. Like, you already had Pete Alonso here, so none of these other guys are going to provide.
Again, with obviously Teo is more of the DH, and again, all these guys minus the center fields, like we talk about with Michael, like Taylor and Bader, there is no good defenders of that outfield. Jerickson, Profar, defensively. So again, the rest of that outfield board, if that was a serious option, then it should be pointing to Anthony Santander. Winker is there, and again, that report, bullshit or not, I mean, you would probably think the guy grew up a Mets fan. He finally got to play with the team. You would think he'd want to come back. And again, do players really have that much? I mean, maybe Jesse Winker is an intelligent guy. He's a very soft-spoken guy when you get him in front of a microphone. When he's on the field, he's a different person. But it looks like he's got a brain in his head. So maybe he does look at the market and looks looking for and knows his value. Like, he fits in the price rise. It's not going to be crazy. Maybe 5 to 10 million at most. I don't think you're getting that. Maybe, in that 8 to 10 range, fine. And if you're looking at that option, like, again, Profar has never been good unless he plays in San Diego. I get it. It's narrative based, but you see the truth. He leaves San Diego, he's ass. He goes back to San Diego, he has like a 6-war season. Like, he is a San Diego Padre. I don't want anything to do with him. I know he's been on free agent boards every year. Let him re-sign with the San Diego Padres. I've always loved Randall Grichuk, but again, I mean, could you do the kind of the bootleg Arizona platoon with bringing Winker and him back? Sure, but again, Starling Marte needs to be shipped out of here for that to even become an option. And this is, I guess, to the next topic we're going to get into. Like, we're saying all these options. I'm like, this is only a 26-man roster. We only got a 4-person bench. Luis Duran is getting one of those spots. So, we have all these ideas. What if Starling Marte and Jeff McNeil, as of right now, are on the 26-man roster? Yes, the Mets can get creative, but again, you have to find a dumbass to take these contracts, even if you eat everything. So again, this kind of everyone's like, this, and it's like,
I mean, once
true,
Winker got here, they were carrying
which I
DHs for a
don't want to
while.
do. I don't want to do.
Which we don't want to do.
And
It's
again,
not a good
I am
idea,
done
but
with
they
that.
did do
Yeah.
it. Yeah. I mean, Grichuk
But again,
provides more versatility to like make some outfield starts, whereas JD Martinez was never making a start, and like Winker occasionally. But I mean, it's a little better, but overall, it's not.
And now you're thinking,
two DHs.
And now you have Taylor, so there's already half your bench. Then you add,
I don't know. If
so like again, we're already eating
into and no backup shortstop.
And no backup shortstop.
Here's the thing.
Well, that's only an emergency, Frank. Come on.
That's right.
I mean, here's the thing when it comes to Jesse Winker. I love Jesse Winker. I would think he would be a fantastic addition to this team. I feel like the energy that would be supplied between him and Jose Siri would be electric. And I would love to see that, to see them just piss off every single team. The overall thinking of bringing back Jesse Winker, where he's most likely going to be playing DH. If there is an injury, he most likely goes to one of the corners. Hopefully there isn't an injury in right field because we just committed 15 years to that. But when it comes to the overall thought of Winker, I would love to have him back. I think that his plate approach, I think his plate philosophy is something that this team needs desperately from the left side. And it really showed in the playoffs of what they really, really needed.
They have it with Soto now.
Yeah, exactly. And it was definitely something that they needed in regards to that. But when it comes to Winker coming in here, we know he's not the greatest defender, obviously, but he can give you the flexibility in a pinch. Something that we felt about, Jock Peterson or whatever a few years ago. Now he's more of a DH. Here's the thing. Here's my fear of bringing in somebody like Jesse Winker or bringing back somebody like Jesse Winker. I feel like if you bring in Jesse Winker, the DH platoon is going to be him and Starling Marte, which I don't want. It doesn't make sense. It's stupid. I think it is such a counterproductive way to look at this lineup after signing somebody like Juan Soto. I understand he's here for 15 years. I have said it multiple times. You don't need to just build a complete all-star team like the Dodgers have, because Juan Soto's here for 15 years. You don't need to go completely insane and go for a $600 million payroll. But when it comes to the overall look of Marte, we've talked about it before. He is 36 years old. He has played half a season for back-to-back years. The only advantages that you get from Starling Marte recently have been hitting left-handed pitching, not hitting for power against left-handed pitching, so hitting singles against left-handed pitching, not using his lower body to steal that many bases anymore, even though, sure, he'll steal one back and forth, but he's not the guy who wreaked havoc on the base pass that he was in Oakland or Pittsburgh. He has, let's say, a strong arm in right field, which he's not going to be able to use because Juan Soto is there. He has no range in right field, and he's not young enough to actually improve. He's done. He's hit his defensive ceiling now. So basically, you are paying $20 million to Starling Marte, hit singles off of left-handed pitching for half of the year. So it's just stupid to me. It really is just stupid. And again, they signed him to that contract. It was guaranteed 4 years. but I would much rather have him off of this roster because I think he gives a little bit more value off of this roster than he does here. I'm not talking about the Starling Marte. Again, I feel like people get this misconstrued when I talk about Starling Marte. I am not talking about the Starling Marte that was an all-star in 2022. I'm not talking about the Starling Marte that was a well-skilled player coming out of the gate who was great in Pittsburgh, who had bounce back years in, Arizona, who was great for the A's there. I'm not talking about that Starling Marte anymore. That Starling Marte is gone. He doesn't exist anymore. Ever since all of that happened, that 2022 season, which is not that long ago, but it's a decent margin, he's had core surgery. He's had double groin surgery. He has had hamstring issues. He has had so many different IL stints, which again was the main concern from when he signed that contract 4 years ago or 3 years ago. So it does not make sense to be giving $20 million, even though if it is 1 year, for somebody that limited in that regard. And I know we talked about a guy limited and very low in value in guys like Daniel Vogelbach or Darren Ruff, but those guys were making what, $1 million, $2 million? Starling Marte is taking up $20 million of your payroll.